Hey everybody, it's Joe Chaffee. Let's take you through the European run for this afternoon, and I'm thinking we're pretty much locked into this idea of what's going to be happening here. First off, this is the system that comes through Sunday night. It's relatively weak. You can just see a little kink here that goes gone by, and we get whatever we get in terms of a shot of rain here tomorrow night. I think maybe outside chance it ends as a mix. One of the issues with that is that it is a little faster than what was initially forecast, and as a result, the cold air gets in here too late. So I think maybe in some northern areas you might see a mix or even some wet snow at the end, but I don't think it's going to be any big deal. Okay, so that goes out, high pressure builds in, and then we start to see what happens with the next weather system. And this is Tuesday, and you can see there's northern energy here. Here's a strong southern feature, and it's already negatively tilted. I mean, the profile of this has gradually changed over the last few days. There was a lead system. It's still here. You can just barely find it now as it moves up. And in fact, I hardly can find it at all as this southern stream system is just very dominant. This first short wave in the northern branch just kind of flattens a bit and really doesn't get involved with this. There's a second one right behind it, and that's the one that digs down and lifts this up to the northeast. So now we're at Thursday. So everything seems to be timing out. This has been, and I've said this repeatedly, this is why we've seen so much change. There are so many let's call them pieces of energy running around in both the northern stream and the southern stream that as these models get a hold of them, every time they run, they key on a different one. And then we find out that maybe one of those short waves is deeper than it was forecasted to be, or perhaps it's slower, or perhaps it's faster. So all these things keep changing, and therefore each run we see these swings. Now, the European has had probably the smallest amount of swings east and west compared to the other models. I mean, the GFS has been ridiculous, jumping from offshore to Chicago to Pittsburgh, back to Indianapolis, back to Pittsburgh. So, the European's been, it's had a few swings, but it's been a little more consistent. And the Canadian keys on things a little differently, and I don't even think that that's worth looking at this point. And then, of course, the weather system is through on Friday. So we'll show you how it plays out at the surface, if it lets me, and it might not. So let's see. There it goes. Okay, so we'll back it up, and you can see here, this is for Tuesday. There is a coastal front that is developing here. The high is up in western Maine. You've got this coastal front, and it's trying to dam down the Appalachians. The next low is getting ready to come out, and there's probably some kind of weak low off North Carolina shown here Wednesday morning. The NAM has it much faster and much further north because it holds on to that first lead piece of energy, makes it a little bit more important, and the other models seem to be recognizing it but just dampening it out because this second system is so much more dominant player. And we have a fairly deep low east of Memphis here Wednesday morning, which winds up going to over or just northeast of Pittsburgh by Thursday morning. And I think the big issue is for our area, we've got a full moon on Monday. We are going to start setting up with an onshore flow beginning Monday night, and you can see it here on Tuesday with the high to the north and the isobars that come from off the ocean and come inland. So there's going to be an increasing onshore flow beginning Monday night and lasting into Wednesday morning before the winds start to turn more southerly ahead of that low. So there are going to be some serious tidal issues from Delaware to southern New England, and then that will then shift on Wednesday to the south shore of Long Island as the winds become strong southerly. So depending on how deep this storm gets will probably give us a good idea of what kind of coastal flooding we might be expecting out of this for the Long Island shores. And the northeast flow, depending on if there's some sort of a low center here, it could tighten the pressure gradient, and that'll also be a determinant in terms of what kind of coastal flooding we may be talking about for New Jersey. Now, let's go to the upper air again, and I'm going to just widen out a little bit because this has been something that has come up because there is some blocking that is developing. It's not very strong, and there's this emphasis on blocking, and blocking is fine and dandy. But if you don't have everything lined up at the right place, and I've said this often enough, you got to have everything lined up right. You could have all these connections telling you that you've got this going on and that going on, and it makes for conditions to be favorable. We have a strong Pacific ridge that's all the way up. We have strong ridging up into Greenland, but if the other systems in between don't line up, it doesn't do you much good. And in this instance, we've got everything troughing out too far to the west. Now, I'm going to leave open the possibility that somehow the model could have this idea of this semi-phase wrong. Wouldn't be the first time. I mean, that's all we've been dealing with for weeks now, phase or no phase. So we'll leave that door slightly open. Pacific Ridge stays very strong as we go through the European's longer range. Actually does have something trying to drop down beyond this first system, and you can see it there with this deep vortex that forms over Hudson's Bay, and there's a stretch of energy that comes down into the western lakes for next weekend, and there's a trough that comes through here over the weekend. But you know what? I'm not going to deal with that now. And there's a blocky look certainly going out to day 10, which now takes us to March 1st, and you've got a vortex centered over western Hudson's Bay, so there is a bit of a cold flow here. So the overall upper air pattern going into March is not exactly unfavorable, but you got to have the weather systems in the right spot if you're going to have any kind of snow issues. So that's it with regards to today's run. I will address this again, of course, as we go through the evening. We start to see more and more models keep coming in, and each one going its merry way. And enjoy the rest of your springtime afternoon. Even though we do have a lot of high clouds around, at least the temperatures did manage to get well up into the 50s to around 60.